share my browser and go into D2L. This is where we'll find everything anyway. So in this particular one, we're going to go to 104 here. And this will this will have all the assignments here. These are the assignments listed there that we're going to have grades for. And I should change it to student so it looks familiar. There we go. It'll tell you whether you've submitted and which ones are graded. I think I've modified the due dates so that they're consistent with the syllabus. I'm pretty sure. If there's any disagreement with these due dates and the one in the syllabus, default to the syllabus. But this should help you keep track of what's due and what's past due. If you don't have a grade in there and it's past the due date, then it probably means I haven't got around to grading them and I haven't put a grade in for anybody yet. But if it's probably 2 weeks past the due date, then you're more than likely going to have to find a 0 right there. And that's a placeholder. If you turn in a late report or something that's due late, a late assignment, then I'll go ahead and grade it and substitute that grade in for the 0 minus any penalties for late. So let's go to content. And let's see, start here. There we go. So there's the syllabus. There's my schedule again. Let's see, the syllabus is a similar format to the lecture. There are some differences. There's no textbook, right? The grading scheme should be coming up here. There we go. So your lab reports are going to be worth 70%. And I think, let me flip over here. We've got 2 types of lab reports. These guys are familiar with them already. The informal lab report is, I'll hand you out the lab exercise and you'll use that to conduct the lab, and any questions, any data, any calculations go on that paper. Just handwrite them, turn that back in. That's an informal report. And informal reports don't have to go into your lab notebook. You will need to get a lab notebook. And I didn't bring any with me, but I've got some in my office. You've got yours already? Okay. So you can see what they look like. And I've got a picture of one in the syllabus, I think. But all the lab reports, the informal reports and the formal reports, and we'll have to talk about the formal reports in a little more detail. The formal reports are typewritten and they follow a certain format. And I give you instructions on the format. I actually give you an example of a formal report. This is a fairly good one. There were some mistakes, but this is a good, you'll have a title page, okay? And you'll have objectives, why we're doing it. Materials. The materials section includes not just the equipment, not just the glassware and measuring devices, but also the reagents. So if you use 1 molar hydrochloric acid, that goes in the materials too. Then we have safety, right? What are your safety considerations for the lab? That's a section. Then you go into the procedure. Now the procedure is given in the hard copy, but it's given in terms, grammatically speaking, it's given in terms of do this, do this, do this. It's what you do. And this is the way you would write it in your notebook when you prepare your notebook. I'll talk about that in a minute also. But when you write it in the report, I'm expecting to see a change in grammar because the report is supposed to tell the reader what was done, not what you're supposed to do. So if you just regurgitate this in your lab report, you'll come out with a 0 for that part. Right? I've got a rubric for grading. So this is the blank rubric here. So there's a line on here for grammar. If the grammar and wording indicate printed procedure was copied, that's worth a 0. I want to know what you actually did in the lab. So you got to be there. And you got to make notes in your lab notebook as you're doing the procedure. If there are any changes to the procedure, then when you write it, instead of saying, fill a 400 milliliter beaker with 300 milliliters of water, a 400 milliliter beaker was filled with 300 milliliters of water and heated on a hot plate. That's the type of change in grammar that you would see in your formal report. That's called the third person passive past tense. Back. Right. Right.
I did that on my phone.
I cut you a little slack on the last part. Well, let me get to the other parts before we get to the end of the report. That's procedure. That's what was done. Then you have a section with data. This is the numerical or the observational collections that you do during the lab. And if it's appropriate, a table works, right? Sometimes you want to add a graph. If you're going to talk about trends, then graphs help. And then you have a section on calculations. And in the calculations, you want to prove to me that you know what to do with the data you just got. Okay. There may also be questions, like a pre-lab question right here. We'll usually work those out in class. And then there may be post-lab questions. If the post-lab questions include what you would normally do as a calculation, then you can put the calculation in the calculation section, and then when you answer the post-lab question, you can refer to that. You don't have to duplicate it. Okay. And then we want, the questions. And then finally, we want conclusions and summary. So a summary is just that, a summary of what the lab actually did and what results came out of it, say in one paragraph. And then the conclusions are, what does it mean? And if you look at the rubric, you'll see what I'm looking for, conclusions and summary. The highest the number of points you can get is includes whether the findings support the hypothesis, possible sources of error, what was learned from the experiment, and 2 or more future applications for real life situations. That shows me, if you reach that level, that shows me that your brain's working and you're actually getting something out of the lab. So it's not like you're going in with a recipe and baking a cake. That's just busy work. The labs are meant to teach also. So the formal report tells me whether you learned anything. Okay, let's see. Lost my train of thought. Let's go to the notebook. Okay, so let me borrow the notebook so I can talk. You can get these most any place. Staples, probably expensive. Online is probably expensive. Walmart is in the neighborhood of $2, $2.25. Okay. You want a quadrille lined bound notebook. In other words, it looks like graph paper. Okay. And the first thing you do is, and it'll probably take a Sharpie with this type of material. You want your name, you want the course number, and the semester on the front cover. Okay. The next thing you do is you go in and you number every page, ideally in ink. Nothing goes in here but ink. At the top right or the top left corner, case may be. So the first page, 1, second page, 2, 3. So all the right-hand facing pages should be odd, and all the left-hand facing pages should be even. So if you're getting drowsy and you start a number and you get over here and you get to this one and it's an even number, stop. You skipped one in here somewhere, or you duplicated the number. Go back and make your corrections. So how do you make a correction in a lab notebook if you're in ink? Draw a line through it and put the correct value, and then initial it. So we know that's not somebody else in there monkeying with your lab notebook. And you number every page all the way to the end. This particular one goes to 160. Actually, they used to go to 200. So they've pared them down. These are bound for a reason, because this is a permanent record of what you've done in the lab. If you ever get a job out, like you're a medical lab tech, you're going to have to keep a notebook of some kind, I'm sure. It may be different than this, but it's some permanent record. So, and this is especially true for research labs. If you work for a company and you work for the government like I did, you have a lab notebook. And in fact, they told us what kind of lab notebooks we could have. And they provided them for us. They were ugly green. They were about that big, about that wide. But we were forced to use them. And you put everything you do in that notebook, so that if you die or if you leave service, this stays. It belongs to the company or the government. And anybody that comes behind you can take it and pick up where you left off. So that should be in the back of your mind. When you write things in this notebook, you want to be legible. You want to be unmistakable in what was done and the instructions for doing it and the results, so that anybody else can come in and read. So how do you do that? Well, the next thing you do, and this is what I'm going to check as a first lab notebook check. Unfortunately, since we're compressed into 10 weeks, I'm going to have to do 2 checks. The first lab notebook check and the preparation for the first lab. I'll talk about that in a minute too. But you need a table of contents. And all you need is the title of the experiment. And this is only for the formal ones. The informal ones, you don't have to do this unless you want to. And then the page that it starts on. And I see you've added a date. That's fine. You can put the date in there too. But I want to see the page number and the title, just where it starts. So I can flip over, and that's where it is. And then subsequent pages will be part of that. And I keep going. If there's another one, then it'll be obvious. The title will be in here, and it'll show me that we're starting a new one. So that's for the first lab notebook check. So when you're getting ready to do the lab, and I'm going to check this before we start the lab, I take your lab notebook and I check it to see if you've set it up correctly in here. What you want to do is move over to whatever page and start on the odd page side. Don't ever write on this side unless you've written some over here, large section, and you made a big X through it, initial it, and move over here. Put it in here. These are safety pages or graphing pages. Like if you didn't leave yourself enough room over here to draw a graph, draw it over here. Okay. So when you prepare for a lab, you want to do a similar approach to the report. You want the title. You want the objectives or descriptive paragraph. You want safety. You want materials. You want procedure. When you write it in here, the procedure will be like this. Do this, do this, do this. Then you want a section set aside for your data. You're not going to have any data when I check it at first because you haven't done the experiment. But you need a section set aside for the data. Okay. What you should do, and what I would do, and what I used to do, is if I had an experiment coming, and I had the procedure here, I knew that I was going to collect certain types of data. I may have even known exactly how many collections I was going to make. I would put them in here in my data section in a table or in a list where I identified the data, and then I had a line here, and I would do that. Then as I was doing the experiment, I knew that I had to put something in that space. And if I got down here with something in these spaces and there was an empty one up here, I stopped and say, did I miss something? Or did I skip it on purpose? If there was some reason that you didn't need to collect that data point, then you would just cross through it initially and move on. But if it was supposed to be there, maybe your lab partner collected it and you didn't write it in. That's one possibility. Or maybe you missed collecting that number and the rest of your experiment is tracked. That's the worst possibility. And then once you've got a section set aside for your data that doesn't have any numbers in it, doesn't have any observations, that's not expected for the experiment, then you'll have a section set aside for calculations. And you're not going to have calculations in here except for pre-lab questions, because they're supposed to be done before you come in. Then following calculations, you'll have questions. You might have pre-lab questions that you've already completed and answered. And then post-lab questions that you've set aside spaces for that. Now, if you have 3 of them, you have 1, 2, and 3. That's all I expect to see. You can write the question in here if you want. That's fine. Probably best. So that if anybody picks up your notebook, they say, what are they talking about? So there's an answer, but no question. And then follow that with conclusions and summary. And that's just a section set aside. You don't have to write anything in it. And that's what I want to see for each formal lab. And I'll be checking for that. Here's I can do your first lab notebook check right now. We won't have to deal with it when we meet again. Let's see. First notebook check. Okay. All right. So I know that blew by kind of fast. Any questions about how to do that? Oh, one thing I didn't give you, I gave you a sample lab report. I didn't give you a sample notebook. What does your notebook look like? That should be in Brightspace. So let me go back here and be sure it's there. Let's see here. Okay. Let me blow that up a little bit. Can I blow that up? Control plus. There, that's better. It's easier to see that one. Let's go lab notebook and reports. Here we go. So there's the extended character set. That one with the green and the blue and the yellow highlight, those are, when you write your report, sometimes in the sciences, we have funny characters that are not on the keyboard. Okay? So you have 2 options. You can either go to the character map tool, find your font, then find the symbol that you're looking for and copy it and then paste it. And that takes forever. This extended character sets are key combinations. Hold down the Alt key, and in the number pad, remember the one that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, type out that number that's next to it. And very often, it will create that character that's shown next to that key combination. And that'll save you a lot of time. It doesn't always work, right? But if it does work, it will save you time. There's one short list over there for Apple computers. If you're an Apple person like that,
you may want to go through there and check those and see if they work. Because I don't use Apple. It's verboten. There's lab report instruction, common errors in preparing a formal lab report. You won't need that right away, but eventually you'll need to look at that. It gives you indications of where you would lose points in a grading scheme, right? These are common errors that students have made and are avoidable, right? Spelling errors is a big one. If you don't use your spell checker when you're writing your report, then you must be crazy. There's a rubric for evaluating the lab report, and you don't need to do this one. You can look at this one, how to create a graph in Excel. There's an example report for actually 2 versions. That one I think is Boyle's Law. There's what's plagiarism in the lab report. Plagiarism is easy to determine in a liberal arts course like English or social studies or something like that. You just don't copy somebody else's work without giving them credit. But it may be a little more subtle in lab reports. What you're expected to have in common among lab reports is the same data that your partner has in your group. That's expected. What you do with it is on you. So you don't want to answer the questions with exactly the same wording as your neighbor, unless you're just, psychically linked. The calculations might look a little different, right? I've had students turn in, obviously, they just copied each other's reports, and that's depressing. So that document will tell you what I consider to be plagiarism. Let's see, if you have to put an equation in there and you're using Microsoft Word, this is how you enable the equation editor. Starting and keeping a lab notebook is there. Here's your sample lab notebook. Let me just open that one so you can see. Okay. So notice I took out the personally identifiable information. And this is an older lab notebook. These used to only cost like $1. And then there's your table of contents. It's set up correctly. And it's legible in ink. And then we skipped a few pages and started on the next odd page there. There's the first one, molar mass by freezing point depression, right? So you could go in and look at this one and say, and does mine look like that one? Because this is our first lab. Okay. I know if you've never, who has never, I know you guys, have you ever had to keep a lab notebook and write a formal report? Okay. So it's just kind of a tweaks to satisfy. I'm sorry? It wasn't on a graph page like that. Okay. So there'll be slight differences then. The reason I set it up this way is because if you ever go out, if you progress to the point where you're going to do research, then this is the format that your publication will be in. The only thing missing is the abstract. All publications have abstracts, and they're just a pain. So you learn to do that later in case you get into research. If not, then this will give you everything that's supposed to go into a report, publishable report. So there you have, notice that all the even pages are empty. One thing that I would find wrong with this one is this person is writing essentially on every line. It's probably better if you write on every other line. So if you have minor corrections, you got a space to put them. Only the major corrections require a big X initial and move to the side page on the side. But if you have minor corrections like this one, and I don't see an initial there, do you? That's a boo-boo. Yeah. Initial any corrections. There's another one. Okay, so I don't have the grading scheme for this one, so I probably hit them for that one. Not initialing corrections. So this is what cutting and pasting. If you create a graph in Excel and you want to put it in your notebook, you can print it out, cut it, and paste it in your notebook. And what was not done here, which should have been done, is you sign or initial across the border between the pasted and the underlying page. Okay. So that if it falls out or if somebody takes it out, at least you'll know something's missing. You may not be able to recover it, but you'll know somebody might be tampering with your notebook. And you can also, if you create graphs in Excel, you should be able to cut and paste them or export them for inclusion in your report rather than hand drawing, because anything that's handwritten in your report, I'll accept it, but I'll dock you for it. This is all print. This is all typed. That was probably, I look back on my education, and that was probably the greatest skill benefit that I gained from my education, was learning how to type, touch typing. And just, I don't know how I'd get along without it now. Hunt and peck, I guess. Do they still teach typing in high school? Middle school. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. You learned typing in elementary school? All right. That's good to know. But there may be hope for our country after all. Okay. So there's an example of, there's more to it than that. That's the example notebook. So let me let's see if there's anything else worth stopping on here. When did we run out of time? 1:30, wasn't it? Yeah, 1:30. Okay, good. Okay. So what else do we have here? PDF readers, you know, everybody's got a PDF reader, don't they? Adobe Acrobat. Yeah. Let's see. Lab exercises are here. All this other stuff is mandated by the school. Here are all your lab exercises. Now, the ones that are informal are in your syllabus, and they're in green. So the first informal one is Le Chatelier's principle. That's lab number 3. So the first 2 labs are formal. The third one, Le Chatelier's principle, you don't have to put it in your notebook. Right? You can just cookbook the whole thing if you want. It'd be better if you're prepared. At least read the lab before you come to class. Then the K value for acetic acid is a formal lab. Formation constant of a complex ion is formal. And the last one, electrochemistry, is an informal lab. Hopefully we'll have time for it. And we're just going to make a battery. Make 2 types of batteries. Right? It'll make more sense when we get there. So it's kind of a fun lab to finish out the semester or the summer term. Okay. So that's all there. And you can work ahead if you want to. It's just if you fill out your notebook, be sure and give yourself plenty of space if you're going to do multiple preps in advance. Then you have the information there if you want to, or you can wait for the hard copy and do it in sequence. It's okay. But everything's here. And there's no final exam in the lab. It's just a combination of, let's go back to the syllabus. Get the grading scheme again. Grading scheme, what did I say? 70% for lab reports. That includes both formal and informal. Lab notebooks, I'll do the first lab notebook check. I just look for those basic inputs. Then I'll do individual formal report lab checks before you actually start the lab. And if you get less than 70% on your lab notebook for prepping for the lab, then you're probably a hazard to everybody. Okay. And I have to decide then whether I want to let you take the lab. It depends on what parts of the notebook are faulty. And then I'll do a check at the end. So when I check your notebook at the end, what am I looking for? Well, I know from the reports whether you're missing information or you haven't done calculations and that type of stuff. When I check your lab notebook at the end, I expect to see all that missing stuff from your reports in the lab notebook. So you're catching up on stuff that you should have done. And how will you know that you didn't do it? Well, your graded report will tell you whether you're missing stuff. It needs to go in your lab notebook. So that's what I'm looking for with the last lab notebook check at the end of the semester. And then the lab skills, just don't blow the place up. You know, don't break a lot of glassware. Don't cause safety hazards, that type of stuff. If I see you're participating, that's a pretty safe 15% for your grade. I've tried to be more quantitative with it, but it just doesn't work. I have to just say, you know, do I think this person knows what they're doing? Are they participating? Some students really participated. In other words, they were like a fount of knowledge for all the other students. If they had a question, they'd go to that student. But those students are rare. Okay, that's what the cover looks like for the most recent ones. You'll need to get one of those. Now you can go to Walmart and try to buy one. Whenever I go to Walmart and I have a few extra dollars, I pull out 4 or 5 of them and put them in my stash. So I can sell you one for $2 1/4. I'm sure I've got some extra ones in my office. And it might be a good idea to get one from me if you don't have one already, because we've only got a week to prep it before you're going to get graded on it. Lab coats. You guys I know have lab coats. Do you have lab coats from previous labs? Okay, you got one. Okay. You need something like this. It needs to be knee length, right? Locally, you can go to a place out on Eisenhower Drive called Little Lena's. See, there's more to it than that. Little Lena's. I forget the full name. But I can give you the address. I used to have some cards, but I think I ran out of them. I picked up a few of her business cards. That's where I got this one. And be sure if you buy it from there, actually, if you buy it from anywhere, usually if you tell them you're a student, they'll give you a discount. I think Little Lena's is like 10 or 15% discount. So you need a lab coat. We have eye protection and gloves, disposable gloves in the lab already. You don't, for the labs we're going to do, you don't need the full wraparound goggles. We have those, and we also have the over polycarbonate covers, right? And you can use those. If you wear glasses like I do with polycarbonate lenses, you're safe. Eye protection, optional equipment. Oh, okay. So let's say you have prepared your report, formal or informal, it doesn't matter which, and you forgot to bring it to class on the due date. So the due dates should be the next time we walk into the lab for the next lab experiment. The previous one is due. Okay. So say you come to lab that day and you forgot your report. Okay, you got till midnight to turn it in. So how do you do that? You don't come knocking on my door and 149 Cayman Drive. Yeah, if you have it in your computer as a document, you just go into the lab exercise. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. Go into the lab exercise here. So this will be the first one. And that document there is under here, molar mass by freezing point depression. That's the assignment. So you go there and you'll notice down here an upload button. That's where you upload your report. If it gets to me by midnight, it's on time on that day. Okay. Let's see, did I forget anything else? Or do you have questions? That's a better way to approach it. Does everybody have used Microsoft Office? Yeah, okay. We don't need to talk about that then. You should already be proficient. But I don't know about transient students, whether you have access to Office 365 from New River. Okay, that's good. Yeah, at least the online apps. Yeah. There's Acrobat Reader. There's a safety contract. So you can give me the safety contract next week if you want.
Notice on these are, be sure to read it. We're not going to talk about it, just read it. And then the last 2 pages are the contract. And the reason there are 2 of them duplicate same pages is so you can fill one out and keep it for yourself. And the other page you fill out and pull it off and give it to me. Okay. In case you're wondering if I made a mistake. Let's see. All right. So do we have anything else in here of interest? There's some links in here that might be useful, some documents, but they're not essential. And if you have any questions about your mysterious instructor, talk to one of these 3. They'll give you all the gory details from the first semester. Let's see. There's Le Chatelier, and there's electrochemistry. Okay. That's all I have. We've got some more time.